Hi there ATGN people. So today we're going to run through a quick deck check for the DD archetype. This deck is like a massive combo deck. It can spit out huge boards, really fun to play, and the new Pendulum Domination structure deck, which has just been released, means that it has a couple of the key cards it needs to really shine. So what we're going to do just quickly is go through some of the cards that I feel are mandatory in the deck that you should definitely run, and then at the end we're going to go through some of the other cards you can consider running if you feel like, you know, branching out to different combos or just some other good choices you can use to fill out your deck. So we're going to start with the extra deck. The whole point of this deck basically is to make massive boards of extra deck monsters, so it kind of helps to go through the extra deck first, because that way when we go through the main deck you kind of can see where we're trying to end up, what we're trying to achieve. So the guy who kicks everything off usually, DDD Flame King Genghis. He requires 2 DD monsters to be fusion summoned, and if another DDD monster is special summoned to your side of the field while you control this card, you can special summon a DD monster from your graveyard. Now this is a really powerful effect, because you can basically fusion summon this card, and then if you summon anything else, which this deck does a lot of special summoning, then he basically gets your 3rd card then from your graveyard, and that's how you sort of end up with like the massive combos of like lots and lots of monsters on the field at the same time, so you can sort of sync her up into like the bigger, larger Xyz and monsters that do a lot of cool stuff. One of the monsters you can sync her for is DDD Gust King Alexander. So he's level 7. It's very important because he is exactly level 6 plus a 1-star tuner, which the primary tuner we're going to be using is level 1. He has a very similar effect to this guy, where if you summon a DD monster, you can special summon a level 4 or lower DD monster from your grave. We won't be using his effect very much though. He basically exists because as a level 7 non-tuner synchro monster, he can be used to escalate into either of these 2 cards. So both DDD Cursed King Siegfried and Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon require that you use a synchro monster as their non-tuner monster, and they're both level 8. So the easiest way to accomplish that is a level 7 synchro monster and a 1-star tuner, which, as I mentioned, the tuner we're using is basically going to be 1-star every time. These 2 cards have pretty similar effects. Both of them have a large amount of attack. Siegfried can negate a spell or trap once per turn during either player's turn, and Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon can negate a monster effect once per turn during either player's turn. Siegfried also has an effect that gains sim life, and Crystal Wing has the effect to, when it attacks a 5 or higher monster, it basically gains the same amount of attack, so they end up taking 3000 damage, and their monster is destroyed. The cool thing about these 2 cards is that if you can get both of them out at once, you basically have 5800 damage on the board and the ability to negate a spell trap and a monster. And in this deck, it's really easy to do that, even though both of them require a non-tuner synchro monster, which usually, as soon as you read a card like that, it has to be like quasar good for you to play it. So we'll get back to those 2 later. You can also run Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. I think you should if you're playing the deck. So with these guys, you're looking to make a level 7 non-tuner, which means you basically have to have, for example, a 6 and a 1-star tuner, and then you synchro, and then you synchro into this guy, and then you do 7 and a 1-star tuner, synchro into this guy. Oftentimes, when you have the ability to do that, what you can also just do is have your level 6 non-tuner and 2 level 1s, a level 1 and a level 2, and then you can make your Trishula instead. Trish has always been a good card. Banishing a card from your opponent's hand, field, and graveyard is always quite strong, and 2700 attacks, nothing to sneeze at either. The cool thing about the DD deck is that in addition to fusions and synchros, it can also make Xyz monsters. It kind of uses all the different types of summoning in the game. It can even pendulum summon as well, which is really neat. So Hope Harbinger is basically the best rank 8 in the game right now. It also has the effect to negate a spell. You can make it be attacked, so if your opponent tries to attack a weaker monster, you can redirect the attack into this guy, and he has 3000 attack, so that's pretty good. And if he's destroyed, or if another Xyz is destroyed, you can have another Xyz you control gain its attack. So again, looking at boards of like Crystal Wing and Hope Harbinger, negating a spell, negating a monster effect, doing something like this first turn can be really devastating for your opponent, because not only do they have to somehow get past the fact that you're negating a monster effect and a spell effect, they still have to deal with 6000 attack worth of monsters, or else you're going to be attacking for a bunch of damage next turn. While we're looking at rank 8s, there is one on theme rank 8, and that's DDD Duo Dawn King Kali-Yuga. He requires 2 level 8 DD monsters, so you can't just use any old monsters, you have to use DDs, but he has 3500 attack, and when he's summoned, your opponent cannot activate any cards or effects, and their effects are negated for the rest of the turn. It's actually both of you. So what that means is this card's summon can be negated with something like Solemn Warning, but once he's summoned, your opponent can't Bottomless Trap Ball, Torrential Tribute, Chain of Magic, Spectacarian Abounds, and back to your extra deck, anything like that. All of their effects are negated, all of your effects are negated, and also he can attach a material to blob every spell and trap on the field. So this guy can be really, really strong if your opponent goes first and sets a lot of back row. If you can get this guy onto the table, basically, unless they have a way to fully negate his summon, you're going to be clearing all their back row and probably attacking them for 3,500 as well, which is really strong. So that's all the extra deck monsters that I'd say are mandatory. There are certainly some others you can use. So, for example, Cypher Lord Omega, very, very strong level 8 Synchro. Doesn't have the requirement of using a non-tuner Synchro monster, so if you have like a level 6 Fusion, for example, and 2 level 1s, you can just make him. And he also puts back banished cards into your graveyard, which is very, very strong. You'll see that some of our stronger cards, basically after they use their effect, they banish themselves as well, so he can put them back so you can recycle them. TG Hyper Librarian, every time you Synchro summon a monster, you draw a card. The deck Synchro summons a lot. In some of our combos, you'll see that you actually Synchro into a 7 and then Synchro again into a level 8, so you can kind of draw a couple of cards off Hyper Librarian. Drawing cards is always very good. And DD Oracle King Dark, who requires 2 DD monsters to fuse, and if you would ever take the life point damage, if as effect damage, you gain that much life instead. It also just has 2800 attack, and it's a level 7 non-tuner fusion monster. So, that's the extra deck. You can see there's a lot of strong monsters there, a lot of strong boards of things like Siegfried, Crystal Wing, Hope Harbinger. But the real question is, how do we get to those cards? So, main deck. The Slimes, these are probably one of the few cards that you need for this deck that aren't included in the Pendulum Domination Structure deck, but fortunately they're both common, so they're really, really easy to get. Necro Slime and Swirl Slime both have very, very strong effects. So, Swirl Slime you can basically use this as polymerization. If this card is in your hand, you can fuse for a DDD monster using this card and one other card in your hand, which basically means you skip the fusion spell part of fusion spelling. So, some good DDD monsters to summon would be Dark, or indeed Genghis, who, as I mentioned before, is the guy who basically kicks off all their combos. Necro Slime, if it's in your graveyard, you can fusion summon a DDD monster by banishing fusion materials from your grave, including this card. So, again, summoning this guy, and Swirl Slime has the effect of when he's in your grave, you can banish him to summon a DDD monster from your hand. So, even at a very basic level, before this deck got a lot of the good cards it has now, for example, back in the day, you used to kind of just have Dark. If you opened with these two cards, you could use Swirl Slime's effect in hand to discard them both to the grave to fusion summon Dark, and then you could banish Necro Slime and Fusion Slime to summon a second copy of Dark, and you basically got 5600 damage for 2 cards. Fortunately now, with cards like Genghis, who when a monster is special summons additional monsters, you can do some really, really crazy things. These 2 cards you basically want to see as much as you possibly can, and fortunately we play quite a few cards that get us to them. Kepler. Level 1, Pendulum Monster. When he's normal summoned, you can activate one of the 2 effects. You can either target a DDD card you control and return it deck to your hand, or you can add 1 Dark Contract card from your deck to your hand. You're going to be adding the Dark Contract pretty much every time. The 2 targets you run are Dark Contract with the Gate, which is during your main phase you can add a DDD monster from your deck to your hand. Because it's a continuous spell, you can do that every single turn as long as this card's on the field, only once per turn though. You do take 1000 damage during your standby phase, but hopefully your opponent is like pretty dead by then and you don't really mind too much. So the combination of these 2 cards basically allows you to search your deck for any DDD monster. You can summon him, grab this searches any DDD monster you want, or if you just open this, it's just the same as Reinforcement of the Army, although you'll be able to use it multiple turns, and both of these cards, this and this, can search for the slimes. So the Dark Contract with the Gate gets you to the slimes much faster, which is great. You also run a Dark Contract with the Swamp King, which allows you to fusion summon a Fiend type monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or your side of the field as materials, which is great. You can also fusion summon. It basically allows you to fusion summon multiple times, even with a Genghis on the board. You can fusion summon again, Genghis will revive things. As you'll see, most of the combos in this deck basically result in you summoning a bunch of cards at once and then consolidating them to some really, really strong extra deck monsters. So we have some Synchros in our deck. Lamia is probably the strongest card that was released in the Pendulum Domination Structure deck. It's a level 1 Fiend Tuner. You can summon it from your hand or graveyard by sending a DDD or Dark Contract card from your field or hand to the graveyard. So you can see that you kind of, playing a DDD deck, you're going to have a DDD monster and a Dark Contract somewhere, right? Either in your hand or in your field. So if you ever see this card, it's probably live. You can probably either, if you set it to the grave and you have a DDD Contract on the field, you can just swap the two for this. And this card's ability to summon itself opens up a lot of combos as well. You can already probably start to see combos where you've got like a Genghis, for example, and then you summon this back, and then this brings something back, and then you fuse with these two. This card does banish itself when it leaves the field when it's summoned by its own effect. But if, for example, you fusion summon Genghis, then fusion summon a monster, then summon Lamia using Genghis, synchro with those two, then use its effect to bring itself back, synchro again, you can kind of get a few uses out of it before it ends up banishing itself, which is very, very powerful. DDD Savant Copernicus. His effect's not super flashy. When he's normal summoned or special summoned, you can send one DDD or Dark Contract card from your deck to the graveyard. Seems kind of underwhelming until you realize that you can send this card, which is amazing because obviously its effect works in the graveyard. You can also send DDD Swirl Slime, who you can banish to summon a monster from your hand. So quite a few of your cards work quite well in the grave, so he's quite strong. He's also just a level 4. And he's a Pendulum monster, so you can theoretically summon him back, or you can use him as a scale. The next few cards, the ratios are kind of up to you as to what you run. This is what I've personally, gotten onto, but there's probably going to be some debate and some revision of this deck as time goes on. DDD Oblivion King Abyss Ragnarok. He's level 5, he has a bunch of attack, he's a kind of cool monster effect which doesn't really come up. The major thing you use him for is when he's in your Pendulum scale, if you special summon a DDD monster, except during the damage step, you can target one DDD monster in your graveyard, special summon it, but then any battle damage your opponent takes the rest of the turn is halved. Primarily use this first turn, when the battle damage you halved doesn't matter, because you're not going to be attacking anyway, right? He's also a level 8, which opens up some rank 8 plays later on, as you'll see with this card, Thomas. So, this card, if it's on your field, you can destroy a DDD card in your Pendulum zone, and if you do, you can special summon a level 8 DDD monster from your deck. So basically this guy, if you have a guy in your Pendulum zone, like even a Ragnarok for example, and then you summon this guy, use this guy's effect to summon something else back, you can use this guy's effect to destroy him to summon another copy of Ragnarok, and that's where you can start to make rank 8 plays, which opens up your Kali Yugas or your Hope Harbingers, which are very, very strong cards. The last card is DD Orthos. So this card's not super fantastic only because he has a massive drawback to his effect, which is when he's special summoned, you can only special summon Fiend type monsters for the rest of the turn. However, pure DDD monsters are all Fiends, so that's not a huge issue. And also, he's a level 4 Pendulum type tuner monster, which is very, very powerful. Even if he had no card text, he'd be like an amazing card. Only because you can synchro for level 4 is a very high tuner level, which means if you have level 4 monsters, you're basically making rank 8s, and you can summon him back every single turn because you can Pendulum summon. So I guess they had to kind of give him the strong restriction just to balance him out. But in a pure DDD deck, I run 1, just for the couple of times where you like really need that clutch level 4 play, and also just things that he makes level 8 synchros with Copernicus, or he can even make rank 4s as well. So spells and traps. Luckily, a lot of these spells and traps are included in the Pendulum Domination Structure deck. So 1 for 1, discarding a monster to summon a level 1 monster from your deck. You have a lot of very, very strong level 1 monsters in this deck. You have Lamia, who you can use as a tuner, and you also have Kepler, who when he's special summoned using 1 for 1, you can grab Dark Contract with the Gate or Swamp King, and this, again, basically gets you to any DDD monster. So you can often discard a monster, summon this, get back the monster you got, and you've basically gone +2 a card advantage, which is really nice. And then all of your DDD monsters are dark, so you can play Allure of Darkness, which is really cool. Draw power is always good. You'll quite often be digging for combo cards. So if, for example, you open 2 Lamias, you probably only need 1, but you would much rather see a couple of copies of Necro Slime or Swirl Slime. You can like Allure of Darkness and draw through your deck to try and get those copies faster. Because this deck primarily aims to go first and do a big old combo, you don't play a lot of traps, because traps going first don't combo with anything. You kind of just have to set them and wait. And you also don't really want to go second and have a handful of traps either. You do run 2 though. Dark Contract with the Witch allows you to send a DDD or Dark Contract card from your hand to the grave to target one card on the field and destroy it. And all Fiend type monsters you control gain 1,000 attack. So all of your DDD cards are Fiends, so 1,000 attack boost is massive, especially because you can flip this on your opponent's turn after they attack, kind of like a Mirror Force or a Battle Trap. And also being able to send a card to destroy a card can be quite powerful, especially if your opponent's already had to deal with a spell being negated, a monster effect being negated, and they've had to deal with 2,000-3,000 attack monsters. They probably don't have a lot of cards left, so trading 1-1 on card advantage like that can be very, very powerful and limit their options. You also run Vanity's Emptiness, so your whole deck is basically trying to go first and set up a massive combo. If you have, for example, 2 very large monsters, some of the only things that can deal with that effectively are cards like Kaiju or Lava Golem. If you flip a Vanity's Emptiness in standby phase, it becomes very, very difficult for your opponent to deal with a monster negation, a spell negation, and a Vanity's Emptiness, so you can kind of lock out games straight away. So those are all the cards that I'd view as kind of mandatory. Some cards that you can consider adding to your deck, if they're within your budget or within your playstyle. Maxi, you are trying to go first, but if you end up going second and you can draw a couple of cards, it means you'll get to those 2-card combos a lot faster. Solemn Strike, similar vein to Vanity's Emptiness, where if you're looking to sort of lock your opponent out of the game, this is one of the better traps. And Dimensional Barrier. Dimensional Barrier is kind of a format-defining card at the moment. A lot of the time, flipping this on your opponent and calling Xyz or Pendulum against certain decks can basically just stop their entire turn and skip it. This deck is not super vulnerable to that, only because you have so many different types of summoning, which is awesome, but also you should definitely be running it yourself if you can afford them. The card is just great. If you have like a Crystal Wing and a Hope Harbinger and then you Dimensional Barrier your opponent, quite often they just won't be able to summon that turn, and you can sort of start your turn with 6,000 damage on the board, which means you get pretty close to game. So I hope you enjoyed the deck tech. The deck is awesome. It's great fun. I'd highly recommend picking it up and giving it a shot. It's super fun just to sit there and work through the combos in your head, and you can sort of just play it at home to practice it, which is nice because you're ideally trying to go first and just, combo out with all your cards. And then once you go to locals, if you've got the combos committed to memory, then you can kind of just impress people by rolling them with massive monsters out of nowhere, which is great. Anyway, if you're interested in grabbing any of these cards, I'd recommend picking up a Pendulum Domination Structure deck. It has almost all of the things you need to build a DDD deck, and impress some people at your locals with big old dudes. Thanks, bye.